Rings of Power, ja sam odgledao ovu seriju do kraja, uspeo sam čak i da nađem onu izgubljenu epizodu, ja mislim da je 6. bila koju nisam odgledao, sve sam odgledao, imam svoje mišljenje u vezi serije, poprilično je slično kao kod ostalih ovih kritičara na YouTube-u, barem ovih pravih kritičara koji su ostali, ali nekako ove budalaštine od serija volim da gledam kod njih, pogotovo kod Nerdrodika, ne znam kakav je slučaj kod vas, ali danas ne moramo ni da rizikujemo da gledamo neku budalaštinu, koliko je budalaština nismo svesni, nego jednostavno pogledamo na YouTube-u jednog kreatora ili 2-3 i sve nam je jasno. Ajde da vidimo šta kaže Nerdrotic u vezi poslednje epizode Rings of Power.
First thing to specify is that there's no such thing really as canon in Tolkien.
The canons of narrative in any medium cannot be wholly different. And the failure of poor films is often precisely an exaggeration.
Kako nema kanon, svašta pa
and
svako
the
ima kanon.
intrusion of unwarranted matter owing to not perceiving where the core of the original lies.
Nerdrotic.com.
Ma sve će kontra reći, samo da budu oni u pravu.
1 million hellions and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet.
It's done. It's over now.
Well, almost. At least I don't have to watch an episode of Rings of Power Season 1 or 2 ever again, but there's still one more to cover. While the penultimate episode of Season 2 was the worst of the series by far,
Da, inače, dobio sam informaciju, ali ne znam da li je svrstana u ovaj video, pošto je malkice stariji, skoro sam saznao da su svi pisci, direktori za sezonu 2 odustali, digli ruke, dali otkaz, više se neće vraćati u 3. sezonu, 4. i 5. koliko su ih već planirali. Ne znam kako će izvesti ostale sezone i da li će, zaista stvarno nemam pojma. Posle ovog fijaska 2 sezone budalaštine totalne, stvarno ne mogu da verujem da bi se usudili da nastave sa sezonama ovoga.
finale is its dumbest. It devolves into absurdity. And you can just forget the lore or the canon that doesn't exist according to the Tolkien professor. This is just a bad TV show. And it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone at this point that showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, who spent over a decade in Hollywood, including a few years at Bad Reboot, and the only thing they managed to accomplish was a partial credit on a bad Star Trek movie. And then some genius at Amazon decided to put these two clowns in charge of one of the most venerated stories of all time.
To je neverovatno, zaista, stvarno, pa to je takva priča, to su takvi filmovi, mislim, kao prvo imamo knjigu koja je spektakularna, a onda imamo filmove koji su zaista dobro odrađeni. Jedna od najjačih trilogija koju imamo u filmskoj kinematografiji, ako ne i najjača, diskutabilno je to. Ali ono što sam hteo da kažem, da ova serija nije bila vezana za Lord of the Rings i da je imala neki normalan budžet za neku normalnu seriju, nemam pojma. Nakon gledanja onih epizoda možda bi rekao bravo. Samo da nema veze sa Lord of the Ringsom. Mislim, nemojte me pogrešno shvatiti, serija je budalaština kad se upoređuje sa Lord of the Ringsom. I kad se ne upoređuje sa Lord of the Ringsom i dalje je izuzetno nepovezana serija. Ali, kažem opet, u slučaju da su imali neki mali budžet, pa da kažeš, pa ljudi, svaka čast. S obzirom koliko ste imali, dobro ste i uradili nešto. Ne, ali oni su imali milione i milione, toliko su miliona potrošili da još uvijek ne znamo ni koliko su potrošili zaista. Možda će reći sad.
Who set out to make Tolkien for dummies and it turned out to be Tolkien by dummies. The good news is the last couple of installments have been unintentionally hilarious. So let's get this over with so we don't have to talk about it for at least a couple of more years or even better, ever again.
I have no right
To bi bilo cool.
to ask this of any of you. But will you follow me? One last time.
Posle svega ovoga ja sam uzeo i skinuo sam Lord of the Rings da pogledam posle toliko godina ponovo celu trilogiju. Čisto da se vratim ono što je valjalo, u ono što je imalo smisla, u ono što je bilo lepo i da zaboravim na ovo.
Previously on the Rims of Power.
Let the Harfoots be your sole concern. I will see to the Eastar myself.
Dark Wizard found his staff, and now the time has come for you to find yours.
There's something under the mines.
Koliko je ovo glupavo bilo, brate mili, em što počinje da zaurlava ova patuljčica, em što ne znam zašto je to uradila i na kraju ispalo, priziva slepe miševe da bi patuljci ovi što hoće da kopaju pobegli. Znači patuljci se boje slepih miševa iako rade u tim tunelima ne znam koliko vekova. Aj važi. Sjajna fora, sjajna. Da, ovo je bilo u 6. epizodi. Da, ona je ispala zaljubljena u kako se zove već, Sauron, u koga se maskirao prvi put, već zaboravio sam mu ime, sve u svemu u njega je bila zaljubljena i izgleda da su tekstopisci hteli da ih spoje nekako. Stvarno ne znam zašto i šta im pada na pamet.
This is all his design. This is what Sauron wants. You forgot your bling bling.
I may have forgotten to mention that the finale is incredibly dumb and it doesn't waste any time. Let's get straight to the stupid. We open up in Khazad-dûm with Durin versus Durin. Durin demands Durin take off the ring, then Durin cries. Then Durin digs too greedily and too deep by himself. After that, Durin calls over Durin to check out the cavern full of mithril he just found and something else. Remember the Balrog from Lord of the Rings? And even though canonically, and I'm looking at you, Tolkien professor, the Balrog shouldn't show up for thousands of years, he's here. Oh, I'm sorry, this is...
Ma da, to sa Lord of the Ringsom, to što su radili taj canon, što ne postoji, jel, sve su uništili. Verovatno zato što nisu ni mislili da postoji canon, ili su barem tako pokušali da ubede masu.
The power I'm talking about, she's here. This is the point where the Rings of Power exemplifies why canonically there's only one Durin at a time.
Durin! Durin! Durin!
I mean, is Durin asking for help from Durin, or is Durin just yelling at Durin? I don't know. Anyway, Durin lives on as Durin decides to self-delete by attacking the Balrog that Amazon obviously licensed from Warner Brothers.
Šta je sa tim bilo, čoveče? Zašto je kralj odjedanput pošizeo i krenuo sa sekirom da napada Balroga? Što bi to uradio, mislim, ne razumem. Ništa nisi postigao.
Hear you now, dear viewer, why did Durin do this? It's completely pointless. It's not like it's going to buy anybody any time, and you'd be right. So now
ne znam ni kako su izašli, ni gde je Balrog ostao. Zašto nije počeo dalje da uništava?
Or the Rings of Power rolls its opening credits and we never see the Balrog again. If you guessed the latter, you unfortunately have watched the Rings of Power. But we did get an explanation from showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay why the Balrog just goes back to sleep and doesn't bother anybody in Khazad-dûm for thousands of years. Because the fall of Khazad-dûm and the Balrog are an allegory, and we know how much the professor liked those, of climate change. When asked by the Hollywood Reporter why the Balrog just didn't destroy Khazad-dûm right there and then, McKay responds, this is the thing where how do societies fall? Usually it's gradual, and then all at once. If you want to use
Brate, oni imaju problem sa maštom, izgleda. Oni imaju problem s mozgom, u stvari, kao prvo. Znači, oni moraju da uporede nešto politički ili nešto, ne znam ni ja, da bi to imalo smisla. Bukvalno su frikovi ljudi. Jo, bože, šta se daš?
Climate change as a metaphor, climate change is not an event. Climate change is a process that ebbs and flows.
You gotta be f***ing kidding.
There are a few storylines that the showrunners decided to mop up in the finale, and I'm going to go over them with the same care they did. But I want to give the showrunners credit. If they are going to truncate the entire Second Age into a shorter timeline and include the events of Numenor, which canonically, Tolkien professor, take place well over 1,000 years after the events of Region, it takes a certain commitment to incompetence to take Isildur, the man who cut the ring from Sauron's hand.
Da, u stvari, ovo je glavni lik kojeg jedva vidimo u suštini. Nije previše nešto viđen, nije previše nešto uradio. Veliki propust. Ovo bi trebao da je glavni lik koji je uspeo da preseče ruku, prsten, odvoji od Saurona.
And turn him into a supporting character with less screen time than the Amazon original characters female Sam, female Frodo, or modernity. And all he does is bond with Theo after he's abandoned by his surrogate father Don Lemonless, saw that one coming. Makes out with the married Tolkien in Tolkien and then fucks off to Numenor after finding out his father's a traitor and Ar-Pharazôn is the king. Speaking of Numenor, after Ar-Pharazôn is chosen as king because an eagle landed next to him, his throne is now threatened because Miriel gets spit out by a white sea worm, and yes, this is the same Miriel that's described in Tolkien's Legendarium as being fairer than ivory, pearls, or silver. And although the elves had a hard time getting a message in and out of Lindon or Region, one made it to Westeros.
We have learned why Miriel was able to bewitch the sea.
And Ar-Pharazôn is branded Miriel and her faithful as traitors for being in league with Sauron. And after fucking up the lore beyond all recognition so they can give Miriel some agency, all in effort to remove the mighty Elendil's agency. First, he's saved by his daughter, an Amazon original character with a nice rack who, for the life of me, I can't remember her name. And all this is done so Miriel can send the mighty Elendil on his path. She even gives him Narsil of the Shards of Narsil, you know, the blade that cut the ring from Sauron's hand, in another repurposed scene.
It is called Narsil.
The white flame.
Reclaim your lordship, and with this...
Čekaj, to je taj mač koji je isekao, koji je odvojio prsten, jel? Od Saurona.
The flame of the west, forged from the shards of Narsil. Sauron will not have forgotten the soul of Elendil.
To je isti taj mač, a?
Elendil rides off into exile and Miriel gets arrested and thus
Oni su
ends
bukvalno
this installment
iskopirali.
of the Numenor.
Čoveče, oni su sve što su radili, pokušavali su da iskopiraju Lords of the Rings. Ono, bukvalno scene su uzeli i iskopirali i nametnuli, odnosno umetnuli u svoju seriju. Samo sa drugim likovima. To već koji put vidim i bukvalno, evo, Nerdrotic je pokazivao već koji put ta podudaranja neko. Neverovatno. Oni ne mogu sami smisliti ništa više danas. Sve je obrada. Sve.
And the Restless. You know, we haven't heard from the Dark Wizard, female Sam, female Frodo, or Gandalf in a while, so let's get this one over with. There is some good news, though. We finally get the big payoff that they've been setting up for over 2 seasons that absolutely everyone saw coming. All while setting up another obvious mystery that will have 5s and 10s of people talking about it until season 3 comes out in 2026. Gandalf finally reunites with the Harfoots and the the Stores, and confronts the Dark Wizard, who confirms he's one of the 5 wizards who are not supposed to show up until 1,000 years into the Third Age.
We are as kings. 5 of us there were.
Not to get too far in the weeds, but he could be one of the blue wizards, but I think it's far more likely that he's going to be another. After the Dark Wizard kills one of the bad guys from Furiosa, he claims not to be a Dark Wizard and asks Gandalf to join him, but when he refuses, the Dark Wizard decides to show how bad things will be under Sauron by killing all the Harfoots and the Stores. I'm starting to like this guy. Gandalf pulls a Ray Palpatine and saves all the Harfoots and the Stores. Except for this one, the Dark Wizard fucks off and says we'll meet again someday.
Čekaj, šta je bilo? Jedan je riknuo, to nisam ni video. What?
Ray Palpatine and saves all the Harfoots and the Stores. Except for this one, the Dark Wizard fucks off and says we'll meet again someday. And I half expected someone to say what?
Jo, izvinjavam se, zazvonio mi je telefon, isključio sam ton.
What a sour man. It's way too soon, though. That scene will probably happen in season 3 or 4. But if you think that sounds stupid, just wait, because we do get Gandalf's name in the most cringe way possible.
Yes.
Be a stranger now.
No, God!
Thank you kindly, Gandalf.
No, God, please, no!
Kao tako je dobio ime. Gandalf.
No!
Pa je ispalo kao Gandalf.
Gandalf? No!
Gandalf.
No!
And I'm still gonna call him Gandalf.
Kakva glup. Pa da li je to najbolje što ste mogli da smislite? Kako je Gandalf dobio ime Gandalf? Zašto ste se uopšte trudili da mu date ime? Zašto se nije zvao odmah Gandalf? Zašto je uopšte imao amneziju? Zašto ne zna svoje ime? Čemu sve to? Čemu ova budalaština? Zašto ste ušli u to kad ne znate, brate?
He gets his name, he goes back to Jedi Master Bombadil, and it's time for some more repurposed dialogue from Harry Potter.
A wizard does not find his staff.
Nego štap pronalazi njega i te fore. Shut up!
The wizard, Mr. Potter.
But we did get a line from female Sam that unintentionally describes the state of this show perfectly.
Some things can't be fixed. Some things lost are lost forever. Because this world's so much bigger than any of us. We've just got to accept it. What's broke is broke and won't fix.
And there's some potential good news or bad news. They separate Gandalf from female Sam and female Frodo, so they could be writing the Harfoots and the Stores out of the story or giving them their own. Considering what they did this season, which was absolutely nothing, I'm leaning towards being written out of the story. Either way,
I don't care.
So let's check in on one of the multiple ships from this show, Sauron Brimbor. And just in case you think I'm being a bit hyperbolic, the Rings of Power creators on that big season 2 finale revealed Sauron's mistake from the stranger's identity reveal, to Galadriel's fight, and whether Sauron and Celebrimbor were lovers.
Oh, fuck off!
While Sauron is using Grandma Brimbor as a pincushion and torturing him, he brings up the fall of Gondolin.
Have you ever seen orcs in the heat of combat? The frenzy comes over them, the blood hunger. When Gondolin fell, they say it went on for weeks.
Keep Gondolin's name out your f***ing mouth!
Oh, wow! If you want to know more about it, read the book. It's fucking awesome. And it should be no surprise Amazon completely fucks up the tragic end of Celebrimbor. Canonically, his dead body is used by Sauron as a battle standard. In the Rings of Power, Grandma Brimbor goads Sauron into skewering him by spoiling the end of Lord of the Rings.
The rings of power shall destroy you, and in the end, I foresee one alone shall
Predviđam, pošto sam gledao filmove.
Ruin! Oh, come on!
And his final words, I shit you not, are calling Sauron the Lord of the Rings.
I am their master.
No, you are the prisoner. Sauron, Lord of the Rings.
What is this, amateur hour? But wait!
Ne razumijem.
There's more!
This is
Ne razumijem
followed
šta mu
by
je uopšte i rekao
Sauron
to.
crying
Da,
again.
zašto Sauron plače, pobogu? Šta se dešava, ljudi? Najveće je zlo.
Sauron. I have many names.
Najveće zlo plače.
Yeah, and I guess one of them is pussy.
To je zato što su oni ne mogu da prihvate da postoji dobro i loše. Oni misle da je dobro i loše samo dve strane. Nema zlo, ne postoji zlo, nego samo dve strane postoje. To sam htio da kažem. Oni ne mogu da prepoznaju, ne znaju da postoji zlo. Zapravo postoji zlo. Ne mislite da postoje zli ljudi. Znači, vi ste ispranih mozgova ljudi, čoveč. Izgleda da ste vi te zloći, ti frikovi u stvari, koji žele da opravdaju svoje neke postupke time što to govore da ne postoji zlo, nego postoje samo dve strane, a druga strana je verovatno neshvaćena, jel? To sam primetio po mnogim filmovima i serijama da se ophode tako. I primer za to jesu orci ovi, ili orkovi, ili kako se već kaže, koji sada brinu za svoju mladunčad i za svoje porodice umesto da budu monstrumi kao što su bili, znači čisto zlo su bili. Oni ne mogu to da shvate u svojim glavama, to je problem.
The last time we saw Galadriel, she was given the 9 rings for men to put their fingers in to get as far away from Region as possible. But when we catch up with our warrior of the wasteland, elven commander, slayer of orcs, girl boss, girl Barian, her dumbass is back in Region. So they can show her saving some women and little girls because men and boys don't matter. I mean, how do you expect me to believe that little 5'4" Morphic Clark is going to save anyone? Just a reminder, Galadriel is supposed to be 6'4". Anyway, they run into some orcs and Galadriel gives herself up and offers up the 9 rings for men to put their fingers in, as long as the orcs spare the women and little girls. At this point, the only thing the orcs should be saying is,
Do it, kill her! Kill her!
And everybody else and rip the rings off her dead body. Instead, the kinder and gentler orcs honor the deal and take her to Adar, who already has Nenya. And despite the ring Nenya healing Adar because Galadriel is so wonderful, he gives it back. Once again, he offers her an alliance, and this time Galadriel's going to accept.
Let this ring heal the rift between elf and orc.
What?
This is followed by one of the dumbest exchanges in one of the dumbest shows ever made, and the worst misrepresentation of an adapted character in herstory.
Help me vanquish Sauron with it, and I swear to you, I will recall my children to Mordor, never to make war on Middle-earth again.
What?
I have slain more of your children than any elf alive.
Kakav razgovor, matori.
What the fuck? Far be it from me to point out that the Lady of Light is about to ally herself with the elf who committed genocide in the south and just sacked Region. Not to worry because the alliance doesn't last long. You remember Smoothie, hard-torturing and pillaging orc who just wants to provide for his family, betrays Adar. And then he gets Caesared as Sauron looks on. And what does
Da, ovog su izboli kao što su Saurona na početku druge sezone, jer smo imali onaj flash na početku te prve epizode. Sad, Sauron je uradio to njemu, znači iskontrolisao je orke i orci su krenuli da slušaju svaku njegovu naredbu bez i malo pogovora i vidi se šta više da su sada mnogo agresivniji i u suštini kao sada tek deluje da su tu oni orkovi ili orci, kako se kaže, već ne znam, oni koji znamo kobojagi iz Lord of the Rings. Mada i pod tim uticajem njegove magije i dalje nisu to ti orci, ali nema vas.
Galadriel do? Does she A, honor the sacrifice Celebrimbor made for her and run away as far as she can, considering she has the ring, the 9 rings for men to put their fingers in, and nobody's paying attention to her? Or B, stand around like an idiot so we can set up some stupid fight between her and Sauron? If you guessed the latter, unfortunately, you have watched the Rings of Power. Meanwhile, back in Region, the battle is...
Što bi se tukli njih dvoje uopšte, kakve veze? I uopšte nemoguće za nju da dobije Saurona po nekom pravilu, zato što je Sauron nije čovek, on je, brate mili, najveća zla pojava koja može da postoji u tom svetu. Ne znam kako da ga objasnim, on je jači od Wizarda, brate mili. Ali u suštini ovde su kao njih dvoje se lože jedno na drugo, koliko vidim, pa on se malo poigrava tu sa njom, nešto, pokušava opet da je navuče na svoju stranu i neke gluposti, tako da...
Over, Sauron has ordered all but the commanders be killed, so what the hell is Don Lemonless doing there? And didn't he get shanked a couple of times last episode?
Da, šta se s tim desilo? Znači, posljednje epizode izboga je lik i pao je dole i naravno da nismo kontali da je mrtav, ali sledeće epizode kao da se ništa nije desilo, pobogu, to baš nisam kontao.
Left dying while it looks like he found a healing elixir that fixed his armor. Somehow High District Manager Gil-Gadady, who canonically stood toe-to-toe with the real Sauron, finds himself in an orc's chokehold. And Doogie Elrond looks on as the orcs represent Jeff Bezos' treatment of the professor's work. And wouldn't you know it, they're saved by Deus Ex dwarves. I guess that Balrog was
barely an inconvenience.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the battle of the Second Age. In this corner, weighing in at 105 pounds with her armor on, she's slain more orcs than any elf alive, the Lady of Fight, Galadriel! In the opposite corner, her opponent, can she change him? The Master of Wigs and the Dark Lord who feels really bad about it. Sensitive Sauron!
Ovo još bolje izgleda ovako ubrzano, čoveče.
Eventually, Sauron gets the best of Galadriel, and this is my favorite scene in the entire series.
Jel je nabo konačno? I to sa krunom njegovom glupom.
Now, never mind the fact, despite the Tolkien professor saying canon doesn't exist, canonically, Sauron never got near any of the elven rings. He's close to one now, and he was able to take the 9 rings for men to put their fingers in. And considering Sauron just shanked Galadriel with Morgoth's pinky ring, you may ask yourself, why doesn't he just cut the ring from her hand like Isildur does to him later? For some reason he needs her consent, and he doesn't get it. Instead, Galadriel in this show fall off a cliff. That's about 2,000 or 3,000 feet high, and she lands like Wile E. Coyote.
Da, samo molim vas, nemojte, mislim, znam da je živa, ali je pobogu, kako, pala je u provaliju, ne možeš preživeti. Ovo mogu da povežem sa igrao sam igricu Resident Evil 2, pa kada je da propadne dole u provaliju, pa razmišljam kako si mogla da preživiš dole, nema ništa. Ali ona se uhvatila za neku šipku, pa je odskočila negde, a to se nije moglo videti dole, pošto je jako duboko. U posljednjem trenutku se kao spasila, ali ovde provali, a ovde nema zašta da se uvati. Ne znam kako bi preživela, osim ako nisi Incredible Hulk ili tako nešto.
God, I can't take this stupidity anymore. Let's just get it over with. The dwarves aren't bothered by the Balrog anymore, but they have some politics to deal with. Sauron fucks off with the 9 rings for men to put their fingers in. Of course, Galadriel isn't smashed into jelly, and Doogie Elrond heals her with Nenya, and we find out why. After getting their asses thoroughly kicked by the orcs, the 3 men needed to ask the woman who caused all this mess by not telling anybody Halbrand was Sauron what to do next.
What course would you advise, Commander Galadriel?
You can talk to me, you know. I'm standing right here.
And apparently her genius idea was...
Možete i meni reći ja sam komandant, nema veze, ajde. Mislim, ono kao, ljudi ovde sam...
To have High District Manager Gil-Gadady put his sword up in the air. That's it. Thus ends another abysmal season of the worst adaptation of a literary work of all time. A subversive, systematic, deliberate, dismantling of the professor's work to reflect the Los Angeles they live in today. The only questions I have left are, who are they going to ship Galadriel with next? Maybe your husband, Celeborn. And when are they going to show the Dwarven, Elven, and Hobbit genocide? And maybe we'll get the answers to these questions when the series ends in 2030. But I'll give them credit for this. The all-female directors they had for this season proved that women can suck as much as men. So we'll end with some unsolicited advice for Jeff Bezos. You took on the Tolkien fandom, and it was an embarrassing loss. So here's what you do. Fire everybody, and anybody involved with this show above crew level should never be able to work in Hollywood again, and cancel this show.
Definitivno.
Take that money and distribute
Tako bi
it
bilo,
amongst
to
your
bi bilo normalno, da više nikad ne budu zaposleni nigde u ovom entertainmentu. Samo zbog ovoga što su uradili.
House workers. That would pump some money in the economy and make the world a better place.
To sam ja izjavio pre nekako.
Burn hundreds of millions of dollars.
Bravo.
The choice is up to you. Hail to the fellowship and fuck this show.
Nerdrotic.com.
Šta bi još mogo reći za ovu seriju, a da nisam rekao? Ja mislim da je sve rečeno. Nerdrotic je isto rekao. Idite tamo na njegov sajt, imat ćete link u opisu kao i uvek. Podržite ga, kliknite na like i subscribe, sve što treba. Takođe i ovde. Ne bi bilo loše da se klikne sve to što sam naveo, da se klikne i kod njega. Pravo je čudo da smo dobili i drugu sezonu ove budalaštine, posle one prve katastrofalne. Da li će oni nastaviti sa ovim? S obzirom da smo dobili drugu sezonu, sad više ne znam. Sasvim je moguće da ćemo dobiti i ostale sezone, ne znam kako, ali sve je moguće. Što se mene tiče, ukoliko budu nastavili sa ovim, imat ćemo o čemu da pričamo na YouTube-u, imat ćemo sadržaja, tako da meni dobro. Ako žele da troše pare tako uzaludno, da se ljudi sprdaju sa njima po internetu, samo roka. I što se mene tiče, udri. Ali definitivno ja mislim da biste mogli da uložite taj silni novac tamo svojim ljudima koji rade u Amazonu, da im pomognete sa platama ili zaposlite još neka nova lica, da imaju kulturnije radno mesto nego što sada imaju. To bi bio sjajan potez. A sa ovom serijom Rings of Power zajeb više. A to je samo moje mišljenje. Šta vi mislite o ovoj seriji? Da li ste imali priliku da odgledate seriju Rings of Power drugu sezonu? Da li ste gledali i prvu i drugu sezonu ili ste gledali samo prvu sezonu pa ste se otkačili od ovoga ili ste bili uporni kao ja pa ste odgledali sve ili niste gledali ništa? Ukoliko imate neko drugačije mišljenje u vezi ove serije, napišite mi dole u komentarima, vrlo rado bih baš pročitao taj komentar. Da vidimo šta s vama nije u redu. Šalim se. Ljudi, toliko od mene što se tiče ove reakcije. Zveknite like, subscribe, zveknite i zvonce da znate kad izlazi moj novi video. To je jako dobra stvar. Ostavite komentar, kliknite na share, podelite ovo drugim ljudima. Mi se vidimo u drugoj reakciji. Sve najbolje. Ćao, ćao.